Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to share with you my top 5 tips for combating loneliness during these times. Now, you can apply these tips to after these times end and we resume our normal life because some of these tips are important in that area too. So stay tuned and stick around. Now, why does this matter? Why does loneliness matter? For a lot of people, I think they don't understand how important it is. You see, I studied evolutionary biology for a while because I was really interested in the topic because it bleeds into every area of life: consumerism, consumer psychology, business, relationships, happiness, and even health. And one of the things I discovered is humans are as great as they are because they are a social species. In fact, we're the most social species given our ability to articulate what we want to say in such detailed ways through language and how much we depend on other people to thrive and survive in tribes and now cities and in societies and organizations. Most of the stuff that we have wouldn't have existed without the continuous collaboration uh, that has come about. And our development in our brains, in our intelligence, was largely influenced by how social we are. So, of course, when we cut off that social contact or we reduce it, our mental health and our ability to be happy decreases. And if you're not aware of this, then you will see a decrease in that happiness and you may not even know why or how to fix it. Luckily for me, I uh, have been working on this even before these current times. So I knew of its importance and I'll carry this throughout the rest of my life by being actively aware of it and taking the active effort to make sure I have and constantly cultivating those social relationships. So that brings me to the first tip. The first tip is actively reach out to others. I found that for me, it's been a struggle, and I always thought, if it happens, it should happen naturally. That's how I make friends. And what this usually ended up happening was I was waiting for other people to initiate or reach out to me, to talk to me, to make friends. And of course, that didn't really work all the time because sometimes others are shy, others don't really care that much about relationships as you do. So they're not saying, I got to form a strong relationship. They're just thinking, I'm living my life. I got to go grocery shopping today. So just by actively reaching out, and you probably shouldn't be like, hey, do you want to be my friend? Because that's a bit too blunt and socially unintelligent. Sometimes you can if you do it in humor, but it's just about reaching out and being like, hey, how have you been? What have you been up to? Talking about similar topics, things that you both enjoy, showing that you actually care about that person. That's how you start building that relationship. Number 2 is taking small steps. So, not everyone can go out of the gate and just build really strong friendships with 1,000 people. That's a lot of work. And for someone who may have struggled with that or may struggle with that initially, take small tiny steps. It doesn't mean you have to load up your calendar with activities or attempts to reach out to different people. It can simply mean taking a tiny baby step. I call it the baby step method. Rather than trying to lift 1,000 pounds, let's start by just going to the gym for 10 minutes a day. That's how I've slowly built up my gym routine. So in the same way, start out by just one thing. What if you did a virtual trivia event for 30 minutes once a week? Or you could just go out and call someone and catch up for 15 to 20 minutes. And then as you start building some momentum and you start feeling how it can be helpful. It may not be helpful, or it might not boost your mood the first time, but after a few times you might be like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. Then you can start layering in different things. Maybe it's a game night, online game night event, and then 2 phone calls, one with family, one with someone else you know. And of course, once we get out of these times, you can do these things in person. And that brings me to my third tip. This is one that Gary Vaynerchuk talks about a lot. And it's reaching out to people you've lost contact with, or just people that you've lost touch with because of how busy you are. This is an opportunity to find people. Maybe it's middle school or high school friends that you haven't talked to in a long time, that were still your friends or friendly, but you've lost touch with. These are people that are awesome, but you essentially forgot about them. And now's a good time to reach out. Because if you keep putting it off, you lose that relationship. And these are people you could have got along with really well. But it's just a reminder that relationships need cultivating. If you just never talk to that person again, and they never talk to you again, then that relationship dies. And it's the same thing applies to any type of relationship, not just friendships or family, but mentor relationships, business relationships, professional relationships. Maybe there's people out there who really helped you out once upon a time. Like I've definitely reached out to pick certain people's brain, but you don't want to be that person who just asks for something and then disappears into the wind, never to be heard from again. You want to show thanks and simple check-ins to cultivate those relationships on LinkedIn and other ways help. Just it can even be as simple as messages or emails rather than phone calls. Hey, I remember that time you really helped me out and you were really open to letting me pick your brain. Thanks again. I want to keep this relationship going, and I'm just checking in. How have things been? Something as simple as that. And I'm working on that too. I tend to forget as well. And that brings me to step number 4. Have self-compassion for yourself. You don't need 1,000 friends. In fact, 5 quality friends is better than 100 shallow friendships. Find people that you really connect with and cultivate those, and focus on those strong relationships. There was a time where I was focused on a lot of surface relationships because I didn't know any better. But I've learned that strong quality relationships beat these surface relationships. And when you're constantly trying to find the next friendship, then you're not cultivating what could potentially blossom into something great. And then the 5th and final tip is realize that physical barriers, especially in the digital age, shouldn't block you from being social. We are social animals, and the thing is, just because we can't be physically around certain people doesn't mean that we still can't be social with them. That's why it's called social media. That's why it's called that's why we have all these different technologies: instant messaging, email, Facebook, YouTube, Skype, FaceTime, all these different things available to be virtual with. And that's because we're a manifestation of these exceptionally social creatures. So don't think that just because you can't physically attend an event doesn't mean that you can't still be social with people. Of course, it's harder. Of course, we're learning now that if you didn't know, that in-person events are a little bit better because we're missing that, there's something missing with virtual. But just remember that these times will not be around forever, and that for now, there's a lot you can do socially still, even if you can't physically be there. And, there's so many tools at our disposal, more than ever before, to make that happen. So there you have it. Those are my tips. And if you've ever seen the movie Castaway featuring Tom Hanks, you know what can happen if you don't socialize. Your mental health will deteriorate, and your yearning for social ability will be so strong that you may turn a volleyball into a imaginary friend just to have someone to talk to. This stuff is natural for all humans. We need that social contact. If you've seen Will Smith's movie, I Am Legend, same thing. He was the last man in New York, and he ended up making imaginary friends with mannequins for the same reason. So, actively seek this stuff and carry this on throughout your life, because even before what's happening now, I was still working on this because, there's still all these things that kept me at home: video games, TV, and all this other stuff. And I had to actively realize I need social ability for my own social skills improvements, as well as my mental health and all these other things. So make sure it's a lifelong effort, not just for these current times. And I'll see you in the next video. Hit that subscribe button.